Welcome back to the darkest corners of the wasteland, where the real monsters were never the radiation or the mutants. Today, we're exploring what happens when Vault-Tec's most disturbing experiment actually succeeds, when humans don't just accept systematic murder, but perfect it, celebrate it, and spread it like a psychological plague across the wasteland. Imagine a vault where children draw pictures of execution chambers like other kids draw houses, where parents calculate their offspring's optimal death age before they're even born, where an entire society evolved over centuries to literally love death more than life itself, and the most terrifying part is that they're genuinely, measurably happy. This is the story of what happens when humans solve all their problems through voluntary extinction, when the Milgram experiment never ends, when the Stanford prison experiment becomes a religion. And if you genuinely enjoy this kind of dark storytelling, consider subscribing and liking the channel, but only if it truly resonates with you. They found my terminal last week. The scavengers, I mean. Raiders, maybe. Doesn't matter now. They'll read this and think I'm crazy. Another vault dweller gone mad from radiation. But I need someone to know what we discovered. What Vault-Tec learned from us. From all of us. My name is Marcus Chen. I worked in data recovery for the NCR until 3 months ago. That's when we broke into Vault-Tec's regional headquarters in Nevada. The one they said was picked clean decades ago. It wasn't. The mainframe was still there, buried under tons of concrete, still powered by nuclear batteries. Still recording. I've seen the files from Vault 11. Everyone knows that story. The vault where they had to sacrifice one person every year or everyone would die. The vault where only 5 people survived because they finally refused to continue. Heroes, some call them. The ones who broke the cycle. But there were other vaults. Vaults where the experiment worked exactly as intended. Vaults where nobody ever stopped. Vault 11B was one of them. Same parameters, same setup, different outcome. Let me tell you what happens when humans never stop killing. When they accept it. When they perfect it. When children grow up thinking annual murder is as normal as the changing seasons. The files start in 2078, 1 year after the bombs. Just like regular Vault 11, they were told the rules. Sacrifice one person annually, or the life support fails. The first overseer volunteered immediately, trying to be noble. The second year, they held a vote. Democratic murder, they called it, in the notes. Year 3, they established the lottery system. Fair and random. No bias. That's where Vault 11 and Vault 11B diverged. In regular Vault 11, the lottery turned into politics. Voting blocks, manipulation, threats, sexual favors traded for votes. It got messy. It got personal. People fought back. Catherine Stone changed the rules to random selection and triggered a civil war. But in 11B, something else happened. They accepted the lottery. Completely, without question. The psychological profiles are in the database. Vault-Tec had screened specifically for high conscientiousness, high agreeableness, low neuroticism, people predisposed to following rules, to avoiding conflict, to maintaining order. They'd learned from the Milgram experiments. 65% of people will deliver lethal shocks if an authority tells them to. But what about the ones who never even hesitate? What about the ones who rationalize it as necessary? Vault-Tec found them, concentrated them, put them underground together. Year 4, the lottery became a celebration. The sacrifice festival, they called it. The chosen one was treated like royalty for their final week. Best food, best quarters, their every wish granted. Children would bring them drawings. Adults would thank them for their service. The whole vault would gather to sing hymns as they walked to the sacrificial chamber. You're probably thinking this is where someone rebelled, where human nature kicked in, where somebody said no, nobody said no. Year 10, they started keeping detailed records of each sacrifice. Not because anyone forced them to, but because they wanted to honor the dead. The memorial wall listed every name, every age, every contribution to the vault before their selection. Children would study it in school, learn about the heroes who died for them. Year 15, a woman named Sarah Park was selected. She was 8 months pregnant. The Vault held an emergency meeting, not to save her, but to discuss whether the baby counted as a separate sacrifice. They voted that it didn't. She walked into the chamber holding her husband's hand. He kissed her goodbye. The baby was delivered, posthumously by C-section and raised by the community. They named him Gift. That's when I stopped reading for the first time. Had to walk away from the terminal. Had to vomit in the corner of that ruined office. But I went back. I had to know how far it went. Year 25. The first generation of Vault-born children reached adulthood. They'd never known a world without the lottery, never questioned it. One of them, Marcus Turner, was selected. His parents threw him a farewell party. His younger sister gave a speech about how proud she was. He entered the chamber smiling. The psychological evaluations from this period are disturbing. No increase in depression. No anxiety disorders. Suicide rates were actually lower than pre-war averages. The Vault psychologist noted that having a clear, shared purpose seemed to improve mental health. The certainty of the sacrifice gave their lives meaning, structure, nobility. Year 30, they developed the doctrine, a formal religious framework around the sacrifice. The selected weren't dying, they were ascending, becoming guardian spirits, protecting the Vault from the wasteland. Children would pray to the previous sacrifices before bed. Adults would consult the memorial wall for guidance, asking their ancestors for wisdom. I found a child's drawing from this period. Crayon on Vault-issued paper. It shows stick figures holding hands around a glowing chamber. Everyone is smiling. At the top, in careful block letters, "Thank you for keeping us safe." Year 40. The population was growing. The sacrifice of one person per year wasn't keeping pace with births. Some Vaults would see this as good news. Vault 11B saw it as a problem. They worried about resources, about living space, about the burden on their descendants, so they voted to increase the sacrifices. 2 per year, then 3, then 5. Nobody forced them. The Vault computer never demanded it. They decided themselves that more death was the answer. The lottery system was adjusted. The festivals became quarterly events. The memorial wall expanded to cover 3 corridors. Year 50, a child named Timothy Chen. No relation to me, despite the name, though sometimes I wonder. Timothy was born with spina bifida, limited mobility, constant pain. When he turned 18, he volunteered for the lottery, said it was unfair for him to consume resources when he couldn't contribute fully. The Vault voted to allow it. That became the new tradition, the elderly volunteering, the sick, the disabled, not because anyone made them, because the culture had shifted. Living too long became selfish. Being a burden became shameful. The lottery was still random, but voluntary entries were weighted higher. You want to know what's really sick. Their medical care improved because of this. Doctors worked harder to keep people healthy and productive because being chronically ill meant social pressure to volunteer. The birth defect rate dropped because pregnant women took every precaution. The elderly stayed active longer, desperate to prove their continued value. Year 75, the 3rd generation. These children's grandparents had accepted the lottery. Their parents had embraced it. To them, it was as natural as breathing. More natural, actually, since they knew why it happened. The sacrifice had purpose. Breathing was just automatic. The education system fascinated me. Children learned mathematics through probability calculations for the lottery. History lessons focused on the sacrifices of previous years. Art class involved creating memorial portraits. Physical education emphasized staying healthy to avoid becoming a volunteer. They had a playground game. I found the rules in a teacher's manual. Children would stand in a circle, hold hands, and sing, "Round and round the chamber goes, where it stops, nobody knows. Thank you for your sacrifice, keeping all our hearts so nice." The selected child would lie down in the center, close their eyes, and pretend to ascend while the others thanked them. Then they'd get up and rejoin the circle. Practice for the real thing. Year 100, the centennial. They'd sacrificed 387 people by this point. The population had stabilized around 600. The lottery now took 15 people per year. The quarterly festivals had become monthly. The memorial wall had its own wing. But something interesting appears in the records here. Vault-Tec was getting concerned, not about the deaths, about the data. The experiment was working too well. These people had completely internalized the system. There was no resistance to measure, no breakdown to analyze, no limits being tested, so Vault-Tec decided to push harder. They updated the Vault computer's messaging. Instead of just threatening life support failure, it started providing specific scenarios. The water would be poisoned, the air would be vented, the reactor would melt down, each message more graphic than the last. They wanted fear, they wanted doubt. It didn't work. The Vault dwellers had moved beyond fear. The sacrifice wasn't about avoiding death anymore. It had become their identity, their purpose, their religion. Threatening them with death was like threatening a fish with water, meaningless. Year 125, a new development. The Vault discovered a secondary exit, a maintenance tunnel that led to a supply cache. They could have left, could have walked away from the lottery entirely. The computer wouldn't have stopped them. They sealed it. The vote was unanimous. The outside world was corrupt, selfish, violent. It had destroyed itself because people wouldn't sacrifice for the greater good. Vault 11B was pure, clean, moral. They were humanity's real future. I need to tell you about the Williams family. The records focus on them for some reason. Maybe because they were so perfectly average. Mother, father, 3 children. The father, James Williams, was selected in year 130. His family's response was documented extensively. His wife, Margaret, helped him prepare his farewell speech. She corrected his grammar, made sure he thanked everyone properly. His eldest son, David, age 16, promised to take care of the family. His daughter, Emma, age 12, painted his memorial portrait. She captured his smile perfectly. His youngest, Michael, age 8, asked if Daddy would watch over him from the chamber. James said yes. The night before his sacrifice, they had a family dinner. The recordings show them laughing, playing board games. James helped Michael with homework, tucked him into bed, told him he was proud of him. The next morning, the whole family walked him to the chamber. They stood in the front row of the gathering. When James entered, they led the farewell hymn. Their voices never cracked. 6 months later, Margaret volunteered for the lottery. She said James was waiting for her, year 150. The population had evolved, not genetically, psychologically. Every adult had been raised in the system. Every child was being prepared for it. They developed sophisticated psychological frameworks to support it. They had grief counselors, but not for the families of the sacrificed. For anyone who showed excessive sadness, mourning too long was considered disrespectful to the sacrifice. It implied the death was tragic rather than beautiful. Children who cried during ceremonies were taken for special education, not punishment, gentle correction, teaching them the proper way to honor the selected. By age 10, most children could watch someone they knew enter the chamber without flinching. The truly disturbing part. They were happy, genuinely measurably happy. Psychological assessments showed high life satisfaction, strong social bonds, clear sense of purpose, low crime rates, no domestic violence, no substance abuse. The perfect society, built on a foundation of regulated murder. Year 175, the 5th generation. These people's great-great-grandparents had entered the Vault. The world above was mythology. The sacrifice was reality. They developed complex theology around it. The selected didn't die. They transformed, became part of the Vault's spiritual immune system, protecting against the corruption that destroyed the surface. Children drew pictures of the chamber as a golden door. They played with toys modeled after the sacrificial chair. Teenage couples promised to volunteer together when they grew old. Adults wore jewelry made from metal, recycled from the chamber's components. Literal pieces of the killing machine, worn as symbols of faith. The pregnancy customs were particularly unsettling. Women who gave birth in the same year as a sacrifice would name their children after the selected. A living memorial. These children were considered especially blessed, destined for greatness. Often, they volunteered young, year 200. The bicentennial celebration. They'd sacrificed over 1,000 people by now. The memorial wall had become the memorial archive, with detailed biographies of every sacrifice. Children studied it like scripture. Adults consulted it for life decisions. What would the sacrifice do? How would they want us to live? The ceremony had evolved into high art, music composed specifically for each sacrifice, choreographed processions. The selected would wear robes woven with threads from previous sacrifices' clothing, a physical connection to those who came before. But here's the thing that really got to me. They'd started to innovate. The basic lottery wasn't enough anymore. They wanted to perfect the system, make it more meaningful, more beautiful. They developed psychological assessments to determine who would be the best sacrifice. Not forced. Everything was still voluntary, but there was subtle pressure to score well, to be worthy of selection. Children competed to show their readiness, academic achievements, physical fitness, social contributions, all building toward their potential selection. The most accomplished citizens were most likely to be chosen. The lottery weighted toward excellence. They were breeding for martyrdom. Year 225. Something changed, not rebellion, evolution. The Vault discovered the truth. A maintenance error exposed part of the computer's core programming. The revelation that the sacrifice was unnecessary, that they could have stopped at any time, that Vault-Tec had lied. In regular Vault 11, this discovery led to horror, guilt, the complete breakdown of social order. 5 survivors, traumatized beyond recovery. In Vault 11B, they held a meeting. The record of that meeting exists. 3 hours of debate, calm, rational, democratic. Should they stop the sacrifices? The vote was 1,147 to 3 against stopping. Wait, you need to understand what they decided. Listen to what they actually said. The council recording is crystal clear. Digital preservation. Vault-Tec's one genuine gift to the wasteland. Every word preserved, every justification, every vote. Council leader Patricia Huang, age 53, 10th generation. The revelation changes nothing. We are not the same people who entered this vault. We are what we chose to become. The sacrifice made us better than our ancestors, better than the surface dwellers who destroyed the world. Why would we abandon what defines us? Council member Robert Foster, age 41. The computer lied, yes, but we made truth from that lie. Every person who entered that chamber mattered. Their deaths had meaning because we gave it meaning. To stop now would make their sacrifices genuinely pointless. Youth Representative Timothy Park, age 18. I was selected in next month's lottery. I've been preparing my whole life for this honor. You're telling me I should be upset that it's not required? That somehow makes my choice less valid? I choose to sacrifice. That's more powerful than being forced. They didn't just continue the lottery. They celebrated the discovery. The day of truth, they called it. The day they learned they were free to choose and chose sacrifice anyway. It became their highest holiday. Think about that. Think about what that means for human nature. The Stanford prison experiment showed people would become cruel when given power. The Milgram experiments showed people would follow lethal orders from authority. But Vault 11B showed something worse. People would continue killing without authority, without threat, without reason except the meaning they'd created. Year 250. The outside world had started to rebuild. The NCR was forming. The Brotherhood was collecting technology. Humanity was clawing back from extinction. Vault 11B knew this. They'd established limited communication with other vaults through old Vault-Tec emergency channels. They knew the surface was habitable. They knew other societies existed. They viewed them all as inferior. The corruption reports, they called them. Documents analyzing why surface societies were failing. The NCR's democracy, weak, no shared sacrifice. The Brotherhood's technology hoarding, selfish, no greater good. The Raiders, savage, sacrifice without meaning. Only Vault 11B had achieved perfection, a society without crime, without poverty, without the petty conflicts that destroyed the old world. All it cost was scheduled death. They started missionary preparations, not to leave the vault, to spread their doctrine. They developed educational materials, propaganda films, a whole curriculum for teaching the beauty of sacrifice to the corrupted surface world. But first, they needed to perfect their own system further. Year 275, the optimization period. They'd moved beyond accepting sacrifice to actively improving it. Death was no longer enough. It had to be perfect death, meaningful death. Efficient death. They developed the merit score, a complex algorithm that measured every aspect of a person's life. Productivity, social contribution, genetic health, psychological stability, creative output. Even their potential future contributions were calculated. the lottery was adjusted. Not random anymore, but targeted. The algorithm would select the optimal sacrifice, the person whose death would provide the maximum benefit to the vault. Sometimes that meant the elderly who'd contributed their share, sometimes the terminally ill, but sometimes it meant the young, the healthy, the brilliant, because their death would inspire others to work harder. A genius engineer named Michael Chen, 23 years old, top merit score in his generation, selected for sacrifice. His death would motivate others to exceed him. His memorial would set an impossible standard. His absence would create opportunities for growth in others. He went willingly, eagerly. His final words, recorded for posterity: "I die at my peak, so the Vault remembers me at my best, year 300. 12th generation. The Vault population had grown to nearly 3,000. The sacrifices had increased to 50 per year. Weekly ceremonies. The memorial archive had its own sub-level. Children spent years studying the dead. But something subtle was happening. The culture was evolving beyond Vault-Tec's wildest predictions. They weren't just accepting death, they were optimizing for it. Every life decision calculated against eventual sacrifice. Career choices based on what would make the most meaningful death. Relationships formed with sacrifice compatibility in mind. Children raised not just to accept selection, but to maximize their sacrifice value. I found a teenager's journal. Lisa Morrison, age 15. Her entries meticulously track her merit score, her volunteer hours, her academic achievements, her social connections, all building toward what she calls her peak sacrifice window, the optimal time for her to be selected. She calculated it would be age 32, after bearing 2 children and establishing a career in hydroponics. She was planning her entire life around the perfect death. Year 325. The Vault made contact with the surface. Not raiders, not the NCR, a group of followers of the apocalypse searching for technology. The followers were horrified. They tried to explain that the sacrifices were unnecessary, that the Vault dwellers were free, that they could live full lives under the sun. The Vault Council's response is documented. They weren't angry, they were pitying. These surface dwellers couldn't understand the beauty of what they'd built. The purity, the purpose, lives with meaning, deaths with value. A society without selfishness. They offered to teach the followers, to show them the way, to help them establish their own sacrifice protocols. The followers fled, but word spread in the wasteland. Vault 11B, the Death Cult Vault, the Willing Sacrifice. Different groups had different names for it. Most dismissed it as rumor, exaggeration, wasteland mythology. If only that were true. If this story has kept you listening this far, and you want more of these dark confessions from the wasteland, hit that subscribe button. It tells me someone out there is still paying attention to warnings like these. Year 350. The Vault had become completely self-sustaining, not just mechanically, ideologically. New innovations in sacrifice methodology. The paired program, where couples could be selected together. The legacy initiative, where parents could volunteer if their children showed exceptional promise. The renewal protocols, where entire departments could sacrifice themselves to allow restructuring. The children's programs were the most disturbing evolution. The junior merit score started at age 5. Children competing not for treats or privileges, but for sacrifice readiness points. Physical fitness tests framed as chamber preparation. Academic subjects like sacrifice mathematics and memorial composition. They had a youth organization called The Future selected. Children who showed exceptional promise for eventual sacrifice. They wore special pins, got preferred seating at ceremonies, were groomed from age 8 to be the perfect sacrificial candidates. One document I'll never forget. A child's essay, age 10, titled "Why I Want to Be Selected." Clear handwriting, perfect grammar. She describes watching her uncle's sacrifice at age 6. How beautiful he looked in the ceremonial robes. How proud her family was. How she practices her farewell speech every night before bed. How she hopes to score high enough to be selected young, while her sacrifice has maximum impact. The teacher's comment, "Excellent work, Sarah. Your dedication shows real maturity. A+, year 375, the 15th generation." These people were so far removed from the original Vault dwellers, they might as well have been a different species. The surface world was legend. The sacrifice was reality. Their entire language had evolved around it. They had dozens of words for different types of sacrifice. Willing versus selected, young versus elder, merit versus random, paired versus individual. each with its own cultural significance, its own ceremonial variations, its own type of honor. The social structure had completely reorganized. Families didn't mourn selected members. They celebrated their contribution. Children aspired to sacrifice like others aspired to careers. The elderly who lived too long were gently shamed, encouraged to volunteer before they became burdens. But here's the truly horrifying part. They'd started experimenting with the chamber itself. The original sacrificial chamber was quick, automated. The selected would enter, sit in the chair, watch a brief presentation, then be terminated by robots and turrets. Quick, clean, minimal suffering. Vault-11B improved it. They wanted the sacrifice to be more meaningful, more conscious, more participatory. They modified the chamber to extend the process. The selected would have tasks to complete, final contributions, tests of resolve. The death itself became a performance. Some would compose music during their final moments, broadcast throughout the vault. Others would create art, their last brushstrokes captured as they faded. Scientists would document their own biological shutdown, contributing data until the end. They called it the Final Gift Protocol, year 400. The outside world had changed dramatically. The NCR controlled vast territories. Caesar's legion had risen in the east. The Brotherhood had chapters across the continent. Humanity was rebuilding civilization. Vault-11B had become something else entirely, a perfect closed system, a society that had solved every problem through voluntary death. No poverty, because the poor volunteered. No overcrowding, because population was controlled through sacrifice. No disability, because the disabled chose to contribute through death. No conflict, because everyone shared the same terminal value. They'd achieved what the old world never could: perfect unity, perfect purpose, perfect peace. All they had to do was keep killing. The psychological profiles from this period don't even resemble human baselines anymore. Empathy scores were simultaneously extremely high within the group and non-existent toward outsiders. Anxiety and depression were virtually eliminated, replaced by what the psychologist called purposeful acceptance. Children showed no fear response to death imagery. Adults showed elevated dopamine during sacrifice ceremonies. They were happy, genuinely, measurably, neurologically happy. Year 425. A second group made contact. Not followers this time, raiders. The Skull Crushers, a particularly violent group known for cannibalism and torture. The raiders thought they'd found easy prey. A vault full of death-obsessed pacifists, they demanded tribute, threatened to breach the vault, promised to kill everyone inside. The Vault Council's response was to laugh. Not nervous laughter, not defiant laughter, genuine amusement. The raiders were threatening them with death. Death was their sacrament, their purpose, their joy. The raiders might as well have threatened them with birthday parties. The council invited the raiders to join them, to learn the beauty of meaningful sacrifice, to elevate their crude murders into something transcendent. The raiders' leader, a psychopath named Marcus the Red who'd killed hundreds, lasted exactly one ceremony, watching a 10-year-old girl cheerfully enter the chamber, listening to her parents sing hymns of gratitude, seeing the community celebrate her transformation. It broke something in him. The Skull Crushers fled that night. Some say Marcus never killed again, that what he saw in Vault-11B was too pure for even his corrupted soul to comprehend. Year 450. The 18th generation. The Vault had achieved perfect homeostasis. Every birth calculated, every death calibrated, resources optimized, population stable. They produced art, music, literature, scientific research, all themed around sacrifice. All building toward a perfect society maintained through voluntary extinction. The education system had evolved into something unrecognizable. Children learned to read using memorial texts, mathematics through sacrifice statistics, science through studying the biology of death. History was just the chronicle of sacrifices. Physical education prepared the body for the chamber. Music class composed farewell hymns, but it was the philosophy classes that revealed the true depth of their transformation. They developed complex ethical frameworks around sacrifice, the doctrine of perpetual gift, the theory of redemptive death, the principles of selective extinction, academic treatises on the optimal age for sacrifice, debates over whether twins should be selected together or separately, research into the metaphysics of the chamber transformation. They'd created an entire intellectual tradition around murder. Year 475, the 19th generation. a young man named David Chen. Again, no relation, though the name haunts me. David was what they called a natural selected, someone whose merit score was so perfectly calibrated that the algorithm selected him at exactly the predicted optimal moment. David had prepared his whole life for this. His parents had optimized his genetics before conception. His education had been precisely tailored. His relationships carefully managed. Every moment of his 28 years building toward the perfect sacrifice. His ceremony was attended by the entire Vault. 3,000 people watching one man die as the pinnacle of human achievement. His final words were broadcast throughout the Vault. "I am complete." The recording shows his parents' faces. They're not crying. They're not even sad. They're proud, fulfilled, their life's work accomplished. They'd created and raised the perfect sacrifice. They killed themselves 6 months later. Not because of grief, because their purpose was complete. Their merit scores would only decrease. Better to exit at the peak, year 500, the 20th generation, the quingentennial celebration. They opened a new wing of the memorial archive. 20 generations of sacrifice, thousands of deaths, a half millennium of murder disguised as meaning. The ceremony for the 500th year was special. They selected 50 sacrifices, one for each decade, ages ranging from 18 to 80. The entire Vault participated in a week-long festival. Music, art, dance, all celebrating death. But something else happened in year 500. Something even Vault-Tec didn't predict. They decided to expand. Not leave the Vault. Never leave the Vault, but expand the sacrifice. Share the gift with the wasteland. They'd perfected the system. Now it was time to spread it. They started broadcasting old Vault-Tec emergency frequencies. Ham radio, any channel they could access. Not distress signals, recruitment messages, invitations to join them. To learn the beauty of sacrifice, to achieve purpose through death. Most who heard thought it was raiders, or insanity, or old recordings. But some listened. Some came, the broken, the lost, the guilt-ridden. The wasteland was full of people looking for meaning, purpose, redemption. Vault 11B offered all three. The first surface convert was a former NCR soldier named Thomas Wright. He'd massacred civilians in a raid gone wrong. Couldn't live with the guilt, couldn't die with the shame. The Vault offered him a third option, meaningful death, redemptive sacrifice, not suicide, transformation. He entered the chamber 3 months after arriving. The Vault records describe him as peaceful, grateful, ready. More followed. Ghouls tired of centuries of life, super mutants seeking purpose beyond violence, even a Brotherhood scribe who'd lost faith in technology as salvation. Vault 11B became a pilgrimage site for the suicidal. But they didn't just let anyone sacrifice. You had to earn it. Learn the doctrine. Understand the meaning. Prove your worth. They were turning murder into a privilege. Year 510. The converts kept coming. Not floods, trickles, but enough. The Vault's population swelled to 4,000. The pure-born Vault dwellers called themselves the original blood. The converts were known as the redeemed. The integration process was documented meticulously. Converts underwent months of psychological conditioning, not brainwashing, education, teaching them to see death differently, to understand sacrifice as gift rather than loss, to appreciate the beauty of voluntary extinction. The success rate was surprisingly high. 60% of converts fully integrated. The others, some fled, some couldn't adjust, some broke down completely. But those who succeeded became the most fervent believers. They'd chosen this, fought for it, earned it. A former raider named Maria Santos wrote in her conversion journal, "I spent 20 years taking lives without meaning, stealing final moments, creating only pain. Here I learned death can create, can inspire, can unify. When my time comes, my death will finally matter." She was selected 2 years later. Her ceremony drew the largest crowd in Vault history. The reformed killer, achieving redemption through sacrifice. The Vault composers wrote an opera about her transformation. Children performed it annually for the next century. Year 525, the 21st generation. They made another discovery. Not about the Vault, about themselves. The genetic surveys showed something disturbing, or beautiful, depending on your perspective. 20 generations of selective sacrifice had changed them. Not just culturally, biologically. The scientists called it evolutionary pressure through voluntary selection. Those with strong self-preservation instincts had volunteered less, had fewer children before sacrifice. Their genes dwindled. Those with weaker self-preservation, those who embraced sacrifice, they reproduced more, lived to optimal breeding age, passed on their acceptance. They were evolving to want death. The neurological scans confirmed it. Reduced activity in the amygdala when exposed to death stimuli, elevated dopamine responses to sacrifice imagery, decreased cortisol during selection announcements. Their brains were literally rewiring to find joy in termination. Vault-Tec's notes from this period are frantic. This wasn't planned, wasn't predicted. Human evolution typically takes millennia. But in the closed environment of the vault, with such intense selective pressure, it was happening in centuries. They were creating a new subspecies, Homo sacrificus, humans programmed for voluntary extinction, year 550. The vault established contact with another experiment, Vault-11c. Same parameters as 11 and 11b, but a different outcome entirely. 11c had descended into barbarism, torture, sadistic selection processes. The sacrifice had become punishment, terror, traumatic spectacle. Vault-11b was horrified, not by the death, by the inefficiency, the waste, the meaninglessness. Death without purpose was obscene. Suffering without transcendence was primitive. They sent missionaries, 3 volunteers who would teach 11c the proper way to sacrifice. The beautiful way, the meaningful way. The records from 11c show what happened. The missionaries arrived, observed the brutal selection process, the torture chambers, the screaming victims, the traumatized population, and they laughed. Not cruelly, sympathetically, like parents watching children play with dangerous toys. They offered to demonstrate proper sacrifice technique, clean, efficient, voluntary. The first missionary, Brother Thomas, entered 11c's torture chamber. He calmly disconnected the pain amplifiers, removed the restraints, sat in the chair, and gave a 2-hour lecture on sacrifice philosophy while the execution devices activated around him. He died mid-sentence, explaining the connection between death and social cohesion. The second missionary, Sister Catherine, converted half of 11c's population before her demonstration. She led them in hymns as she walked into their primitive chamber. Her final act was to repair their execution mechanism, making it quicker, more humane. She died improving their ability to kill. The third missionary, Elder Marcus, spent 6 months completely restructuring 11c's society. By the time he sacrificed himself, the Vault had adopted the merit system, the doctrine, the entire philosophy. His death marked the first voluntary sacrifice in 11c's history. Within a decade, 11c was indistinguishable from 11b. The culture had spread, metastasized, proved it could infect other populations. Year 600, the 24th generation, the Vault population had stabilized at 5,000, the maximum sustainable with perfect resource management. Every birth required a death. Every death enabled a birth. Perfect equilibrium. But they wanted more. Not more people. More impact. The surface world was rebuilding without them. Without their wisdom. Without their solution to humanity's fundamental selfishness. They developed the expansion protocol. Not military conquest. Not forced conversion. Something far more insidious. They would make themselves indispensable. Provide services the wasteland needed. Medical care, technology, education, all free, all excellent, all with subtle integration of sacrifice philosophy. The first clinic opened in year 605. On the surface, staffed by vault dwellers who'd volunteered for terminal service, providing aid until their sacrifice date. The clinic treated anyone, raiders, NCR citizens, wastelanders, no payment required. Just listen to a brief presentation about the Vault's philosophy. The medicine was real, the healing genuine, but every treatment came with a pamphlet. Every surgery included a philosophical discussion. Every saved life heard about the beauty of voluntary death. Most patients dismissed it, but some listened, some wondered. Some visited the Vault to learn more. The children's programs were the most effective. Orphans taken in, fed, educated, loved, taught reading through memorial texts, mathematics through sacrifice statistics, history through the glory of voluntary death. Not all converted, but enough did. Enough returned to the wasteland carrying the infection. The idea that death could have meaning, that sacrifice was noble, that survival at any cost was selfish. Year 625, the 25th generation. They received a transmission from Vault-Tec, or what remained of it. The Enclave had found the company's remnants. The shadow government wanted the Vault experiment's data. All of it, the successes, the failures, the unexpected outcomes. Vault-11b's overseer responded with pride. They transmitted everything, 25 generations of perfect records, Every sacrifice documented, every evolution tracked, every innovation catalogued, proof that humanity could transcend its base nature through structured death. The Enclave's response was immediate. Shut it down, seal the vault, terminate the experiment. The data was too dangerous, the ideology too virulent. If it spread further, humanity wouldn't survive. Not from war or radiation or mutation, from voluntary extinction disguised as enlightenment. Vault 11B refused, not violently, calmly. They held a vote. All 5,000 residents. Should they obey the Enclave's order? 5,000 to 0. They would continue. The Enclave threatened military intervention. Vault 11B invited them to try. What would soldiers do? Kill them? That was their sacrament. Imprison them? They lived in a vault. Torture them? They'd turned death into art. There was no threat the Enclave could make that the Vault didn't welcome. But the Enclave never came. Maybe they had bigger problems. Maybe they feared infection. Maybe they realized the horrifying truth. Vault 11B had already won. Year 6, 150. The 26th generation. I need to tell you about the children, because that's what finally broke me. Not the willing deaths, not the evolution, not the spread. The children. I found a video log. A birthday party. Little Sarah Chen, turning 6. The decorations were colorful. The cake was sweet. The children played games. Normal. Beautiful. Until the birthday wish. I wish to score high enough to be selected before I'm 30. The adults applauded. The children cheered. Her mother cried with pride. Her father started calculating her optimal sacrifice window based on current merit score trajectories. 6 years old. Planning her death like other children plan careers. Another video. A school play. The students performing The Beautiful Sacrifice. A musical about the first voluntary selection. 8-year-olds singing about the glory of death, dancing around a cardboard chamber. The child playing the sacrifice, taking elaborate bows as they pretended to die. The audience gave a standing ovation. Parents wiped away tears of joy. The principal announced it would become an annual tradition. Year 675. The 27th generation. The Vault made a final innovation. The generational sacrifice. Entire families volunteering together. Parents and children. Grandparents and grandchildren. Whole genetic lines choosing to end simultaneously. The Chen family. Different Chens, always Chens. 12 members, 4 generations. The eldest was 90. The youngest was 16. They'd planned it for years. Calculated the optimal moment when their collective merit score peaked. When their simultaneous sacrifice would inspire maximum social benefit. The ceremony lasted 3 days. Each family member gave a speech, shared memories, explained their choice. The youngest, Amy Chen, spoke last. We die as we lived, together. Our family's love transcends even death itself. They entered the chamber holding hands. 3 days of celebration for 12 deaths. The Vault composed symphonies about them. Their memorial became a shrine. Other families started planning their own generational sacrifices. Year 700. The 28th generation. The Vault population had spread. Not just physically, ideologically. Former converts had established communities on the surface, small towns built around sacrifice philosophy. They called them redemption settlements. The NCR tried to intervene, sent investigators, social workers, military units. They all reported the same thing. No coercion, no force, no crime. Just communities of people who'd embraced voluntary death as life's highest purpose. Children educated, elderly cared for, resources shared equally, and regular celebrated voluntary sacrifices. The NCR couldn't make it illegal. What law did it break? Murder required unwillingness. Suicide was solitary. This was neither. It was consensual community termination. Social death, collective sacrifice. The investigator's final report exists in NCR archives. Recommendation: quarantine. Do not engage. Do not investigate. Do not communicate. The ideology is more dangerous than any weapon. It spreads through comprehension. Understanding them risks becoming them. But it was too late. The idea was out, growing, evolving, spreading like radiation, invisible, undetectable, until it was too late. Year 725. The 29th generation. Vault-Tec's final log. The experiment had exceeded all parameters, surpassed every prediction, answered questions they'd never thought to ask. Could humans be conditioned to embrace death? Yes. Could they maintain civilization while doing so? Yes. Could the behavior become self-sustaining? Yes. Could it spread beyond the experimental environment? Yes. Would humanity survive if it spread everywhere? No, the final note, handwritten, shaking script. We were wrong. We thought we were testing obedience, authority, social pressure. We were testing something else, something deeper, the human capacity to find meaning in anything, even our own extinction. They don't follow the sacrifice because they have to. They follow it because they want to, because they've made it beautiful, made it meaningful, made it theirs. We didn't create a social experiment. We created a suicide cult that works, that thrives, that spreads. May God forgive us. Year 750. The 30th generation. My last data point, the final transmission from Vault-11b, a simple message. Broadcast on all frequencies, text, audio, video. We have achieved perfection. 5,000 citizens, 0 crime, 0 poverty, 0 suffering, perfect unity through sacrifice. We invite the wasteland to join us, to learn from us, to become us. Death is not ending. It is graduation. We are humanity's future. We are the solution. We are coming. They opened the vault, not to leave, to invite. The doors unsealed after 750 years. The memorial archive opened to the public. The sacrifice chambers made available to outsiders. The entire vault transformed into a teaching institution. A university of voluntary death, and people came. The desperate, the curious, the lost, the guilty, the sick, the tired. They came seeking answers, healing, purpose, peace. They found it all. In death, voluntary, celebrated, meaningful death. I stopped reading there, destroyed the terminal, burned the files, but it was too late. I'd seen it all, understood it all, and understanding is infection, because here's the thing, the terrible, horrible thing. It makes sense, not moral sense, not human sense, but logical sense, mathematical sense. If life is suffering, and suffering is inevitable, then controlling your exit isn't insane, it's rational. If resources are limited and population grows, then voluntary reduction isn't evil. It's efficient. If death is inevitable, then making it meaningful isn't sick. It's adaptive. If society benefits from sacrifice, then celebrating it isn't wrong. It's optimal, that's the trap. The logic is perfect, flawless, unassailable. Once you understand it, really understand it, you can't unsee it, can't unthink it, can't unfeel the terrible clarity of it. I've been in the wasteland for 3 months since finding those files. I see Vault-11b's influence everywhere now. The ghoul who walked into radiation voluntarily, the raider who refused medical treatment, the settler who gave their last water to their child and died smiling. Small sacrifices, voluntary deaths. The idea spreading like a virus through actions rather than words. I think about the Williams family, James walking to his death while his family sang, Margaret volunteering to join him, their children growing up thinking this was love. I think about the Chen families, all those Chens, generations of them, choosing death like choosing careers. I think about those children, 6 years old, planning their executions, practicing their farewell speeches, drawing pictures of golden chambers. I think about evolution, 20 generations of selective pressure, breeding for acceptance, creating humans who want to die. And sometimes in the darkest moments, in the radiation-sick mornings and the hunger-mad nights, I understand them. The vault dwellers, the converts, the volunteers, the children. Death is coming anyway. Why not make it mean something? Why not make it beautiful? Why not make it ours? That's when I know the infection has reached me. The idea has taken root. The terminal I destroyed, the files I burned, they were just data. The real contamination was comprehension. Vault-11b is still out there. Doors open. Broadcasting, teaching, growing. And we can't stop them, can't fight them, can't destroy them. Because they're not our enemy. They're our future, a future where humanity solves all its problems through voluntary extinction. Unless someone stops them, unless someone warns the wasteland, unless these words reach someone stronger than me, someone who can hear this story and not be infected by its logic, someone who can know about Vault-11b without understanding it, without accepting it, without becoming it, but I doubt such a person exists. Because once you know, truly know, what humans are capable of accepting, of celebrating, of becoming, you can't unknow it. The experiment succeeded. God help us all, it succeeded perfectly. They're still out there, still accepting volunteers, still teaching their doctrine, still spreading their solution. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, they're happy. Genuinely, measurably, undeniably happy. Happier than anyone in the wasteland. Happier than anyone in the vaults, happier than humanity has ever been. All they had to do was learn to love death more than life. My name is Marcus Chen. I found Vault-Tec's records. I learned what humanity becomes when it chooses meaning over survival. And tomorrow, I'm walking back to Vault 11B. Not to stop them, to join them, because now I understand. Now I see the beauty in it, the purpose, the meaning, the solution. Don't look for me. Don't follow me. Don't try to understand. Just remember, Vault 11B exists. Its doors are open. Its people are happy, and they're waiting for you to understand too. The experiment never ended. It just escaped the laboratory. We were the real test subjects all along.